Coming to you live from the shadow of the big house, it's IT for You. Tips and tricks on ITS tools, products, services, and more with your host, Gene Mackey. Well, hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to IT for You. I'm your host, Gene Mackey. These are live webinars brought to you by Information and Technology Services. If you are having audio or video problems during the live webinar, tell us in the chat pod. If it's not on our end, we can offer some tips. Thanks, Rich. While watching the YouTube version, look in the description field and you see a link to a Google Doc. The same Google Doc I have right here under web links that you all can click and open up right now. If you do need an accommodation to participate, just let us know. Coming up, I had to cancel the business object session on input controls, but I'm doing one at a more introductory level on report filters and tabs in business objects, and that's in January. Today we've got working with live data on digital signs, and we've got Mandy Grabowski from ITS, and Eric Fruth is also here, and he'll be answering some questions. And just a reminder that I'm assuming that you read the description. We're not starting at square one here. This is a little more intermediate level. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Mandy in here. And here we go. All right. That's weird. Okay.
Good morning. Hope everybody's ready to talk about live data. So I put together a Google presentation that would go over setting up live data using a Google Sheet. And so this kind of assumes some knowledge, so we'll get into that in just a second. I guess let's start with what is live data. And live data is basically what Four Winds Interactive, our software for digital signage, it's what they came up with to be able to pull in content that you can format and display on your signs from most external sources. So that can include spreadsheets like Google or Excel. That can include CSV files. You can link into SQL databases, RSS feeds, XML, and some third-party products like EMS or the Dean Evans scheduling system. Today we're just going to go over populating your sign and displaying images from a Google Sheet. So getting started, at this point what we're assuming is that you're already rolled on to the ITS digital signage service. You have a file storage location or UNC path where you can store your images. You have a location and a player configured in Content Manager. You'll also need a template in Content Manager sized appropriately for this image content that we'll be adding. And then you also finally need a Google Sheet. And the Google Sheet has to be published and shared with anyone, available to anyone with the link. And then it also needs to have at least one column. But for demo purposes, we're going to have 3. So I guess I'll start by jumping over to my file storage location. So for this demo, my location is here. It's a shared network drive, and I've only got 3 images in here. And these happen to be pulled from the Google, the UMich Google Box account for digital signage. So there's an ActiveView poster, Ask the Expert, and Kids Care. So that's my storage location. Some things about the storage location that are important to know. There has to be the appropriate permissions. So if you, I don't know if you have access to modify the permissions for folders. If not, your local IT folks will have to do it. But basically, in the security for those folders, the content player software has to be able to talk to this file location in order to display the content. Okay, having said all of that, and in the presentation too, there's the specifics on what user groups need to be added. So for demonstration purposes, I put together a template, and I don't know if everyone can see that. Looks like it. Okay, sorry about that. So in this very, very simple sign, I have got a title. I've got the date and time, or just the date, and then I've got a 5-day weather forecast. I left this big open space here. This is where I'm going to put my images. So looking at the network overview, which is this area to the left, you can see my title, my date, my weather. The only thing that's left is my main content region, which is going to be where I'm going to put my images. So I'm just going to minimize everything. So to create the new live data, I need to first make sure I have a Google spreadsheet ready to go. Where am I? So in my Google spreadsheet, and I'm just going to pull this up in the presentation, I've got things blocked off in red. The first thing is the document URL, because this is important. And then I've got my 3 columns, the image, the start playing, and end playing. So this is where it gets a little tricky, and it looks like something has moved on my presentation here. Bear with me. But ultimately, this URL up here at the top, sorry, it's early. So the URL is basically the docs.google.com spreadsheets, but where it says key, that's actually where I'm going to put the key from our Google spreadsheet. So I tried to underline that, and I think maybe if I get out of the present, there it goes. Now it looks a little better, but ultimately that's what we're considering the key. And then the GID is the Google ID for the particular spreadsheet. So hoping this will work. I can just open it up. And there's my spreadsheet. Now if I had created any additional tabs in this worksheet, that GID will change and have like an 8-digit number associated with it.
So you only want the one tab, right?
I only want the one tab for today's demo. Okay, so having said all of that, that means the URL that we're going to need to enter into the live data looks like what I've got here. So it's a pretty long URL, but that's what we're going to need to use. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to head back into Content Manager. Now I'm ready to create my live data content object. So to do that, all of you have your own content category, the blue folder. And in this case, I'm using the PSA one. I'm going to right click. And I'm going to do new content in this category, live data. I got to give it a name, so I'm going to call it IT for You Demo. And then I'm going to enter in that long URL of my document. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to update the deployment behavior. I should probably back up and say that there's step-by-step instructions for everything that we're doing out on our website, and we'll share the URL with you at the end of the session.
And it's also in the Google Doc.
And it's also in the Google Doc. Thanks, everyone. So I need to change the deployment behavior to say, don't copy this resource, use the network location. What that means is I want it to go looking at my spreadsheet for updates. I don't want it to keep looking for something that it downloaded, because it'll never give you the current real-time data that you're updating in the spreadsheet. You can test it if you want, and you can see it brought back the data that's in my spreadsheet. The next thing I need to do is I need to update, oh, and I should probably show you, if I go back there, you'll notice it split up my URL. So now it's knowing that it's a CSV format. It's got my key separated out, and then ultimately my GID is 0. So it just does that automatically.
You click that middle icon to get it.
I did. This is the dynamic URL icon. If you hover, I think it'll start to tell you that eventually. But I could be lying. Okay. So the next thing I need to do is, since I'm using a Google Doc, Content Manager knows Google will read as a CSV. So I'm going to choose separated text, and I'm going to just accept the defaults, which indicate that the first row is header row. That's really, oh, one more thing I'm going to do here. The update interval, this is how frequently Content Manager is going to check your spreadsheet for updates. So if you're only making updates once every day, you can do that to 24 hours if you want. I'm going to do it to 30 seconds for this demonstration so that we're not all waiting 15 minutes for content. And that's really all I'm going to do at this point. So now I've created the live data object. And I'm going to try to get back to it. Okay, so now I can see it in my list of items, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this up to my main content region. So it's in there now, but I still have to do a few things. I've already told it what to point at to look at data, but I've not told it how to lay out that data. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that edit source content, and I'm going to click on the layout ellipsis button. I could also just right click and go straight to edit source content layout.
Could you do that a little slower?
Yes. So I went back up to my live data item. I did a right click, edit source content layout. Now, when it pulls up the layout, what it's going to do is it's going to look at my spreadsheet for those column headers. So these first 5 fields up at the top, static text, markup text, built-in, pagination, and quick index, those are defaults from the software. But the next ones, the ones that are not italicized, those are my column headers, image, start playing, and end playing. I'm going to maximize this so it's a little easier to see what's going on. When you're in the layout, back up here. When you're in the layout, this first box up here is a header. I'm not going to have a header. I'm just going to have images. So I'm going to go ahead and just smush that down to 0. And you can also use the numbers down at the bottom. For title, I can just make it a 0. Then I can take my region size, which I can show you how to get to that. Let me minimize this. If you right click on your actual region, whoops, I think it's cutting off my screen. Sorry about that. If I right click on my region and I go to edit source region, I can grab the size of my region, which in this case it's 1484 by 848. That's this whole window. If it lets me get back to it. But that's this whole window here in the main part of my screen. I think I hosed it up for a second there.
You're too quick for it.
Okay, so back to my layout. And I'm going to maximize it again. I'm going to change my title to 0. Now I'm going to change my layout dimensions. Right now it just defaults to 24 by 400. I want this to be 848 by 1484
To match the region, right?
to be exact size as the region. Now it'll tell you at the very bottom, in a region 848 pixels high, there would be 1 row of data per page. This is an exact fit. If I wanted to repeat this up and down in columns or across the screen, I could set it up to do that as well. In this case, I just want the images to display the whole span of the region. Are there any questions at this point? I guess I'm looking at you two. No? Okay.
Oh, wait.
Somebody's typing? Okay.
What if the images are not that size?
So we'll actually set it up so that if the images are not that size, we can set it to fill container and maintain aspect ratio. I'll show you that in just a second.
That was a good question.
That was a great question. Thanks, Patty. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I've already got this content type pointing at my spreadsheet, but now it needs to know where to look for the images. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull down some markup text. And the reason I'm using markup text is because I can add a little more than just the values offered, like image, start playing, end playing. So in this case, I can make my field properties also be, you know, the size of the region. So 1484. And what was it, 480? I think so. And my X and Y should be 0 and 0. Okay, so now my markup text should be spanning my entire region. Now you get to delete the markup text, that wording, and I actually need to place in where I stored my images. So in this case, that location that I mentioned at the very beginning, I just need to copy and paste that UNC path and just paste it right over the words markup text. The only other thing I need to do is add another slash and then brackets and then image. So what it's doing is it's adding a path to the existing data field up at the very top here. So by doing that, it's saying, okay, look in this location for any images. That means I have to save those images as images. If they're in there as anything other than a JPEG or a PNG or a GIF, they won't display.
And in case you can't see all that, we have it in our documentation site as well.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, so now that I've got that, the next thing I need to do is I need to hit enter to accept the text. Now I'm going to right click, and Patty, this is where your question comes in. I'm going to go down to formatting, and it's going to give me some options. I'm going to choose that this field contains a path or a URL to an image. Then I have the ability to say center if smaller than container, fill container, and container they mean region, fill container while maintaining aspect ratio, or fill container distort aspect ratio. We don't really want to do that because we don't want to distort the images in any way. So I'm going to choose fill container while maintaining aspect ratio and hit OK. The next thing I need to do is in my spreadsheet, let me go back into that, I had set it up with a start playing and end playing. So basically at this point I don't have to use the digital signage software once I get this configured. I can just go into my spreadsheet and put in new start playing and end playing dates, throw my images in a location, and just manage the sign completely from this spreadsheet.
Nice.
So heading back in there, what I need to do is I need to filter it. So I need to add a filter, which is up in the top right corner, and just drag your start playing date over to your filter. I'm going to change it to date and time on or after, I think. Okay, I lied. It's got to be on or before. This is why we use our job aids. Okay, so on or before now. And then I want the end playing to be on or after now. So now it's going to look at that spreadsheet, and if something ends playing today and something else starts playing tomorrow, it'll know to do that automatically.
Are you able to zoom at all, or is that not an option?
It's not.
Okay.
This is as zoomed as I can get.
Okay.
I think we're good here, so I'm just going to hit OK. And now it put my files in here. And it's going to rotate through each one of them. But I kind of screwed up on my sizing. So this is one of those things where you may have to tweak it. I went back into the layout, and I can see that my markup text did not really span the entire region like I had thought it would. So if you run into that, you just need to come back into your layout and tweak it a little bit. I think that's good. Let's take a look again. There it is. So now what it's going to do is it'll rotate through, and because if you go back into your edit source content, let's talk about duration. I've got it set to play each image for 30 seconds. So I could change that to be 10 seconds. I could change that to be a minute. But right now 30 seconds seems appropriate, and it'll just flip through each item every 30 seconds. If I were to add any other information to my spreadsheet, it's already looking at that every 30 seconds as well, and it would just add in whatever images to the sign. So let me get out of there so you can actually watch it, and I can make this a little bigger.
This would be a really good way to take advantage of all the shared content that people are advertising.
Yes. So if you are part of the digital signage community, we'll say, you'll know that, the Google Plus community for digital signage, you can see that people are always posting different flyers that are available in Box. So it's umish.box.com, and it's the ITS digital signage folder. There's some things that are specific to a particular unit. There's other things that are university-wide, like HR, benefits, mHealthy, things like that. So I just grabbed 3 that were added by Matt Snyder yesterday, and that's what I'm in the rotate right now. So are there any other questions about what we just did? Everybody feels confident they can go back to their office and build a sign using a Google spreadsheet?
Are they overwhelmed because it's a little tricky?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. And so with the Google presentation that's going to be shared out, everything is detailed out with screenshots. I've highlighted things in red. I've put explanations. So it's a little more involved than just a job aid. But I think it'll help if you just follow along with that and you can add it to your sign.
And there's information about the Google Plus community that we use for digital signage as well. That's on our website, and that link is on the Google Doc that's down in the web links.
I'm trying to look at that from what you guys see.
We're seeing picture in picture, so go back to.
Okay. So get out of there, Mandy. Okay, so this is the presentation right here. So just to give you an example of what I had done. For the file permissions on the folder, I listed out what they are. Because a lot of times when you ask your local IT to update permissions, they say, what for? So this will tell you exactly what and why. And that's not in the job aid. And then with the template, you can see just a bare bones layout of what I had done. And then when we start getting into details, you'll see those red blocks over things that I wanted to just point out that are relevant to this. Okay, good.
So this webinar is for Mandy to get you all excited about the concept of doing it, and then using the materials to actually build it out your way, take it to new extremes or whatever.
I should probably add that, up until today, our team has always gone out and done trainings for units, but our team has become just 3 of us, and it's really difficult to get out and actually do these 2 and 3 hour sessions to really train people. So we've been working really hard and having Eric's help. We've been putting more and more job aids on our website to make it more self-driven. So if there's something that you want to do, you should be able to go right to our website and have the instructions or the step-by-step instructions. We are adding new content as frequently as we can crank it out, and as we learn more about what capabilities we have. So if you needed to configure your sign for emergency alerts, or if you wanted to set up some live data to pull MBUS information, not just the kiosk view with the map, but you can actually pull from the code and see when a bus is arriving at a particular stop, when the next bus is arriving. There's a variety of things that you can pull from the MBUS data. But I pulled up our website, and I wanted to show you, if you go to Your Sign Content, that's our page, and that has all of our job aids that we have so far. So that's there's basics, just if you're trying to get familiar with the software, just so you can get in and play. Then there's an e-learning course, which talks about building a simple sign, that has 4 regions, which is date and time, title, a main content area, and the weather, which are pretty much what you'll see standard on most digital signs. And then any type of specific content that you wish to add, there's a job aid. So if I go into the date and time job aid, just as an example, it gives you some overview information, and then it goes into, there's a video. So if you're more of a visual learner, you can see the video. And then there's step-by-step instructions with screenshots. And again, those fun red blocks that draw your attention to what you need to do. And then if there's any tips or tricks, those have been added as well.
And if there are any topics that aren't listed or any information that you'd like to know how to do, just let us know and we can work on getting that documented as well.
So if there aren't any questions, then I think we just cranked through this pretty quick. Go get your coffee.
Also on our website, you can see on the left the Collaborate section. That's where you can find information about our Google Plus community and how to share content.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.
Don't go yet.
Oh.
And here's Gene.
I just got a few things to say here. All right. Stop sharing. Go back to my little PowerPoint. All right, so here's the Google Doc. There's the Google Doc. We will put up a closed caption version of this within a week on our YouTube playlist. If you're not on the IT for You announce list, you can join that here. If you need more help, you can contact the Service Center. So thanks very much. We're going to stop recording. Those of you who are live, please stick around and give us some feedback.